Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to our first Boys in the Booth podcast episode, number 226, our first episode here in 2025. It's great to be back. Hope you enjoyed our World Junior preview episode. Big thank you to Ladislav Šmíd, former NHL defenseman and Czechia coach, for joining us on that one. And congrats to the Czechs on their bronze medal in the World Juniors in Ottawa. Hope you had a great holiday break, and it's great to be back and have things going again. So, fellas, we'll start it off here with Core 4 stories. So it's the return of that. And the way I've got this laid out, 4 items, of course. I've got 2 that are in the Atlantic Division and 2 in the Metro Division. So we'll start in the Atlantic. How about the Detroit Red Wings, who looked absolutely dead, and then they make the coaching change? Derek Lalonde is out. Todd McLellan comes in, and we knew that there was going to be a coaching bump, as we see pretty often around the NHL whenever a team makes a coaching change. So McLellan comes in behind the bench, and the Red Wings are on a 7-game rip right now. This is a career high in number of wins consecutively in the Steve Yzerman era with the Red Wings, with him as general manager. A 6-2 victory over Seattle on Sunday, and are right back in the race. They sit just 2 points out of a wild card spot. Let's start there with the Red Wings, who have won 7 in a row.
Yeah, I think it is the longest win streak since 2012 was the stat I saw. And of course, it's a coach bump. Should have put $1 million on them winning the next handful of games. It's inevitable, but 7-1 since he's joined, 7 in a row now. Their power play is red hot, and they are winning some close, gutsy games. So it's, it looks good.
Yeah, it's a tale as old as time, right? You get a new coach and you go on a bit of a streak. The problem is you want that to be sustainable. And of course, 7-1, clicking at whatever that is, an 80-something% win percentage, it's not going to happen the rest of the year, but they just need to be good enough to get into the playoffs. And they're creeping up. We're going to talk about that this episode, but this is a tight race. It's not going to be easy for them, but they've got to just keep humming along. Patrick Kane has been good recently, a bit of a resurgence for him under the new coach. Looking at the scorers list on the team, a lot of minuses in the plus-minus category still, and the team goal differential still a big fat minus there. So they're trending in the right direction, but it was a bit of a really tough start. So they dug themselves quite a hole. But with this new coach bump, they're slowly climbing out of it.
Yeah, definitely. It will wear off at some point here, but the Red Wings are certainly taking advantage of that new coach bump for sure, with McLellan now behind the bench in Detroit. All right, and we'll stay in the Atlantic Division, guys. Ridley Gregg of the Ottawa Senators got a nice little extension earlier this week. It's a 4-year contract. $3.25 million is the AAV, and he's a good young player who I think plays the right way for the Senators and is a nice part of their future. I would consider him, a kind of a middle 6 forward, moving forward for the Ottawa Senators. So a nice little deal for Ridley Gregg, a good player.
Yeah, I'm happy he got a deal. He's become a bit of a cult favorite in Ottawa. The fans all love him. The way he plays the game. Yeah, he's probably destined for the middle 6, but he plays with, an engine and a lot of grit and shoots the puck like a madman. So a lot of people like him in Ottawa, and now they can keep liking him until he gets really good, and then they'll trade him.
Yeah, exactly. Case, we were talking about that today. How good would this Sens team be if they didn't trade any of their players? And turns out they'd be pretty good because all their former players are great. But yeah, no, I don't mind the contract for Greg. Like you said, Case, shoots the puck hard, especially into empty netters. Better not be doing that against the Maple Leafs anytime soon, or Morgan Riley will flip his shit. But I don't mind the contract. I feel like that's a typical, middle of the lineup contract these days, especially with the cap going up. Young player, good bet. He's never going to, shoot the lights out in terms of points. I think right now yeah, he's got 13 points in 39 games. So what's he on pace for there? Like 25 to 30 points. So I don't know. Like, I don't think that's his big, draw as a player. I think it's some of the things that Casey said. It's playing with an edge. It's being able to move up and down the lineup. So yeah, I don't mind the deal at all. I feel like where the cap is going, especially jumping, what is it, like 8 million next season or something now confirmed?
Yeah,
9 million
Alan
maybe?
Walsh reported that. Yeah, supposed to go
Yeah.
up to 97 million or something.
Yeah, that's crazy. So
That is
yeah, I
crazy.
think the value is pretty good.
Yeah, I would agree. Kirby Doc got a very similar deal with the Montreal Canadiens, and I mean he's really struggled, but that contract is really nothing to gripe over. So, all right, guys, two items left here for Core Four Stories to kick off the pod. We'll go over to the Metro Division now. The New York Rangers have won 2 in a row for the first time, believe it or not, since mid-November, the 17th to the 19th. They are now 4 points behind Columbus for fourth in the Metropolitan Division. It's really crazy that they've been able to kind of stay in it and stay alive barely while they've just completely gone off the rails here. But I don't know. Like, are the Rangers digging themselves out of this?
I don't think they are. I think all they're doing right now is making it harder to make the decision to trade some of the valuable assets that they have in this team and kind of
Right.
take a step back for a season. I think they've got enough in the pipeline and, enough good hockey players in New York that I know it's going to be disappointing considering their last few seasons to take a step back and maybe miss the playoffs, but I think that might be where they're heading. No surprise that getting Shesterkin back, results in a couple wins here, but um, at this rate, I don't think he's going to win them to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, who knows with this tight race in the East, right? Like, it's not like any team, even at the very top, is like blowing the doors off in terms of getting points. It's kind of, it's a bit of a crawl and it's a muddy middle there. And even the teams who we thought were out, even a team like Buffalo, who's in dead last in the East right now, like, they're not that far out. Like, it wouldn't be crazy if they rattled off 10 in a row because we've seen them do it before and climb their way back up. So, for New York, like, they're sitting with a 500 win percentage. That's a better win percentage than the Pittsburgh Penguins, who, they have their own problems as well. But people are talking about Pittsburgh like they're competing for a wild card spot as well. And they're just 2 points back, Pittsburgh is. And New York is 4 points back. So I don't think it's crazy to say that they could, go on a bit of a tear here and get back into a playoff spot. But I also see the, case kind of what you're saying is like maybe take a step back and, realize that this season isn't the one and come back better next season. Kind of actually similar to what the Devils did last year, where everything went wrong for them, even though we knew that they were a better team than what their record that they finished with, was displayed. But so, yeah, I don't know. The New York Rangers, perplexing team, because you look at them on paper, even after making a couple of moves, sending out Kakko and Trouba, and it's like they're still good on paper. And it's impressive how bad they were able to be with such a good team on paper. So I don't know. I'm not out on the Rangers yet. Like, I'm not sold on, I'm looking at the wild card right now, and it's like Columbus is sitting in a spot, like Ottawa, Detroit, Montreal, they're all right there, Pittsburgh, and it's like the Rangers are right behind them. And I think the Rangers are a better team than all of those teams I just listed.
Yeah, you're right. And yeah, I'm not 100% out on them being a playoff team yet, but it might be a wild card spot. And then is this team good enough to win from there? I don't know. I think, the Metro, the door is closed on the top 3. I would expect.
Yeah.
The Atlantic is kind of getting there. Like Tampa's within reach, but you look at their plus 38 goal differential. That team's a lot better than their record even. So the Rangers have their work cut out for them. And I mean, even with them winning and kind of, fighting back here, they're still 4-5-1 in their last 10. And that's a long hill, especially with how some of these other teams in the East are playing.
Yeah, and they were impressively bad for a long stretch. So, like, if they can play, just over 500 hockey from here until the end of the season, like, I don't know. I like their odds more than, other teams that are ahead of them right now by points. Anyway, we'll
Really,
see.
really surprised that there has been a coaching change there in New York. But hey, if they can keep rattling off some wins, you never know. I'm definitely not out on the Rangers by any means as well. All right, guys, and our final item here for Core Four Stories. Feels like every couple of weeks we're talking about Alexander Ovechkin achieving another record milestone, however you want to put it. He becomes the second player ever, along with Gordie Howe, to have 20 consecutive 20 plus goal seasons. He is now just 22 away from reaching Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record. We have to talk about this quick again. Just another piece to put on the mantle for Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, he's incredible, and I just love watching him play. I watched the game the other night, and Montreal, and he just doesn't join the rush on the power play breakout, stands up by the blue line, stands in his spot, still gets the puck, still scores from there. It's been happening for 20 years, and no one can stop him. No one loves scoring goals more than Alex Ovechkin, and no one does it easier. It's so much fun to watch, and it's great seeing him approach this record. I hope he beats the record. I like seeing Crosby, taking another step up the leaderboard and all-time points. It's great seeing these guys who formed the childhood, our childhood, the three of us for sure, in our era. Just seeing them breaking records is great.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And it seems like this guy scores one or two every night. Like he's got 20 in 27 games now. Obviously, he missed a bunch of time when he broke his leg, but I think it was 40 days or something that he missed. And then he was back after breaking his leg. It seems and it's crazy to say because of his age, but it seems inevitable that he's going to break it this season, doesn't it? Just the way things are going, the way he's scoring. He needs 22 more. You said Harper. I don't know. It would be a crazy bet to have placed at the start of the year. If you asked me if he was going to break it this year, given his age and his declining goals pace over the last 5 years or so. But now, it seems almost inevitable. So I hope it happens this year. If it doesn't happen this year, it will certainly happen early next year. And yeah, we're kind of blessed to be able to see this happening in real time.
We most certainly are. All right, fellas, that does it for Core 4 Stories to kick off episode 226. And now we are going to get into our mid-season check-in portion of the pod. So it's hard to believe that we are halfway through this 24-25 NHL regular season. It is absolutely flying by, but there are playoff races both in the West and the East to keep our eyes on. And we're just kind of going to have a free-flowing discussion about all of that. So let's start with the Western Conference, guys, and we'll kind of organize it by division. So let's start with the Pacific. And you've got Vegas, Edmonton, and LA pretty firmly in the 1, 2, and 3 spots. And then there's that middle pack of teams in that division all fighting for that 4th spot and are staying in the playoff race. And then with one team in San Jose being pretty much out of it. So why don't we start there in the Pacific?
Yeah, the Pacific, a team that really stands out to me here is the LA Kings. And they're kind of around where we predicted at the beginning of the season for them to land, but doing it in a way that I would say that's typically expected from LA over the last 10 years, but not the way we expected this season. And it's defense. This team is just locked down, hard to score against. Watching games against them, you just feel like, I don't know if we're ever going to score. It's like watching Team Canada in the World Juniors. It was I don't know if this team's ever going to score a goal. Well, that's what it's like playing against LA. And if they continue to get league average or slightly better goaltending, then this team's going to be a bit of a threat because they still have guys who can score goals here. Kopitar, Kempe, Fiala, Brant Clark is doing phenomenal things on the back end without Drew Doughty. And then there's the big point. Drew Doughty will be coming back eventually, and this team's going to get even better. So they stand out to me. They are up against a couple juggernauts in Vegas and Edmonton, can't wait to see Vegas pick up Jonathan Taves because, of course, they would. Like, I mean, put the money on that one. But yeah, it's the Pacific shaping up pretty good.
Yeah, except for a team like Vancouver, and that's a team that is kind of standing out to me and I wanted to bring up. But I'll touch on LA first. Like, how crazy is it going to be where, LA has this great season kind of against all odds? Like, not saying that people were counting them out, but it seemed like over the past, couple years, people have become down on LA a little bit. And this season, they come out, they lose Drew Doughty, and then they're still very good. And they're sitting in second in the Pacific right now in a pretty good spot. But right now they're matched up to play Edmonton in the first round if the playoffs were to start today.
That'd be 4 years in a row.
So you just know if that
worst case on
4 years in a row and three wins for the other team so far. So you just know that would be a terrible matchup for them in the first round, which would just suck. And like a lot of other people are kind of sick of this whole playoff format thing that we've got going on where the same teams play each other every single year. It's fun, I guess, to see LA and Edmonton battled out in the first round every year, but I don't know. It's kind of old. I'd like to see something different, but
yeah, that's fair.
One more thing to point out about LA here. $11 million in cap space available at the deadline. So they can go out and be buyers and try to buy a player who can help them against the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, although this year, like, we're going to have to eventually get into this as the season goes on, but are there any real big names out there being floated as guys who could be on the move? Like, I think too many teams are in it still right now for those rumors to be out there. But I was kind of thinking about this the other day. It's like, who's going to be the big deadline acquisition? Because there's always at least one or two.
I haven't heard too many floaters out there, but you have to, like, back to our previous discussion, that New York Rangers, I feel like they have some good, talented playoff experience players that are going to be available at the deadline. They've already been, mentioning Kreider's name, and they've scratched him a couple times. Like, wouldn't that be a guy to pick up to play in the playoffs?
Yeah. How about Kreider having 2 assists through this season so far? That's crazy. Like, I think he has 15 goals, 2 assists. Like, it took him like 30 games to get his first assist on the year. It's insane.
Yeah, for sure. And just one more thing on the LA Kings, like, that is a team that I really didn't expect them to be nearly as good as they've been this season. And, Case, as you mentioned, they're going to get Doughty back at some point here. That would be like a trade deadline addition right there, getting their top defenseman back, who they have gone the entire season without so far and have still been this good. And, it's interesting, like, looking back at that Dubois-Kemper trade as well. It's kind of worked out pretty evenly. Like, Kemper has historically just been really good with the LA Kings. He's been good there once again in his second time around with LA, and Dubois has been good in Washington as well. So I was surprised to see how that deal has worked out. And one more thing too, I know that, like, a lot of people have been commenting on Quentin Byfield not having the offensive production that I think a lot of us expected from him this season after the breakout year that he had last year. But Elliot Friedman made a really good point on Hockey Night in Canada this past weekend, saying how much Byfield has improved defensively. And again, that just goes back to the point that you made, Case. Like, this team is so defensively sound, and it's just funny how that's carried over from, Todd McClellan. Then he was let go. Now Jim Hiller comes in. The Kings, I think, are playing more of an up-tempo style. They've kind of let go of the 1-3-1, but they're still playing so well defensively, even without Drew Doughty. And I thought that was a really good point, too. A guy like Byfield has really stepped it up defensively and is clearly learning a lot from guys like Kopitar and Philip Deneau.
Yeah, for sure. Those are 2 great guys for him to learn from. And that's the way you have to play, though, when you've got guys like Kemper and Dave Riddick as your goalies, not to disparage either of them. But, Kemper's had his ups and downs, obviously was really good in Colorado. not even great when they won the cup. I think he was like a 900 or something, but he's splitting games evenly with Riddick. Like Kemper's played 20, Riddick's played 21, which is something going into this year I wouldn't have predicted. So no matter who's in net, like they've both been pretty good, and it's because of the style that the team plays.
Well, I'd appreciate if Kemper would play more on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
But do you think that was some long foreseen foresight? Was that part of the plan, drafting Byfield under a guy like Kopitar? Similar build, similar, output in the minors. Like, I don't know.
Thing is,
is it a long-term project here? Like, let's shape this guy
question.
to be the next Kopitar.
If he was like a 10th overall pick or something, I think there would be more to say about that theory. But the fact is, he went number 2. Everyone said he was going to go number 2. There was not a debate. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like,
I thought I remember debate around that draft, but
well, maybe Stützle, right? But I mean, that was because that was the same draft, right? Stützle 3 that year, and then
the 2020 draft.
Yeah,
exactly. So moving on from LA, Chad, you wanted to touch on Vancouver real quick?
Yeah, I mean, they beat up on the Maple Leafs last night, and Kevin Lankinen got a shutout, and like all of a sudden, that's George Vezina between the pipes in Vancouver when Demko is in the lineup, out of the lineup. Like, you know, who knows with his health history what's going on there, but you know, he's out again. But Lankinen's been incredible, so I just wanted to point that out. And it
absolute bargain. We've been talking about him.
Yeah,
like he wanted 2.1 to start the season. They waited and held out on him, $850K, and he's been great. Yeah,
and so I had to bring that up because he shut out the Maple Leafs last night, and I gotta say, like, even though the score was 3-0, I thought the Maple Leafs played horribly, and Vancouver, like, that should have been a schedule win for the Leafs, and it wasn't, because Vancouver's reeling right now, and that's the reason I wanted to bring them up, really, is like they have so many internal issues right now that go beyond the whole JT Miller, Elias Pettersson conflict that's going on. But Lankinen's definitely been a bright spot, so I definitely wanted to point that out. But they didn't look like a cohesive unit last night. I gotta say, like, they, you know, some bad looks, like, just all around, like, just kind of throwing the puck away and whatnot. And I know, like, it's rich for me to say because they shut out the Leafs 3-0, but they don't look the same as they did last year. And clearly it's a mental thing, and there's a lot going on in the dressing room, and they've got to figure it out. But just not good. And I saw a clip too the other night. Quinn Hughes gets run over. I think they were playing Washington, and it was like a TV timeout, and Quinn Hughes is skating, just nonchalantly past a Capitals player who dumps him, and he's full like yard sale, like has to pick up his stick and everything after the fact. No one did anything on Vancouver. Wasn't a scrum. There was no pushback. Like, just, it's a team that looks totally disconnected, despite the fact that they have a really good lineup top to bottom. So just, it's an interesting one to watch for me. They should be a playoff team, but right now they're sitting behind Calgary, I believe, in points percentage. So it's not a lock that they're going to be a playoff team, despite the fact that I think they should be.
I don't know. It seems like the Winnipeg Jets 2.0 here. They just drama in the dressing room. And what did Winnipeg do? Got rid of their coach, got rid of their captain, moved on from Dubois, who was causing issues, and then they became the best team in the league. So I don't know. You talk about names being flown. Well, JT Miller's name has been out there. Pettersson's name's been out there. That would be some big, impactful moves for sure. So, it's something going on in Vancouver. I'm still not that worried about them. There's not many teams chasing them that are causing too much concern, and I think that they can shake this funk, and they have the guys. They've been plagued with injury. Demko's been gone. They've had Hronek gone. They've had Hughes is beat up. Like, there's a lot of excuses in Vancouver, and I think they can iron these out.
Yeah, for sure. The one team that's right around them is Calgary, who's ahead in points percentage right now. And, Calgary's team on paper is not as good as Vancouver's. I think we can all agree on that. But over the last 20 games, I saw a stat today, Jonathan Huberdeau over a point per game and
Yep.
has something like 13 goals. So it's like they're heating up at the right time. They're getting good goaltending from Dustin Wolf. So it's like for Vancouver, this should have been a spot for them. That's a lock. But if they don't smarten up and figure out whatever the hell's going on in the dressing room, they could piss this season away, which would just be brutal considering, their playoff last year and everything that went into last season, which was just so perfect for them.
Absolutely. And a couple of things on Calgary and Vancouver. The Flames, great to see them in this spot. They have exceeded expectations. Wolf has been unbelievable. Good to see Huberdeau finally thriving in Calgary over the last little while. But this team does need goal scoring. They are dead last, I believe, in goals per game as of right now. And with the Canucks, they need another defenseman. They need another top four defenseman, I think, to add to that group. I think they clearly miss Nikita Zadorov, who has had a real tough time in Boston with that big contract that he signed there. Vinny Desharnais has not really worked out with the Canucks, and so they could really use another defenseman because like Case mentioned, like when Hughes and Hronik especially are out of the lineup, like they are so incredibly thin on the blue line. I think when those two guys were out, they had like Derek Forbert on one of their power play units for one game, and he is a third like pair defenseman at best. So anyway, that's something that they'll have to address. Shall we move on to the Central here and talk about the race going on there? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the Central now. And, you look at really four teams who are kind of competing for the top spot. It looks like, Winnipeg might be the team to run away with it here, but you've got the Jets, the Wild, the Stars, and the Avalanche. And then again, outside of Nashville and Chicago, you've got St. Louis and Utah who are in there fighting for spots as well. So what do we have to say about some of these teams in the Central?
The Central's interesting. Like it's kind of exactly around what we were predicting, except you had to flip Minnesota and Nashville. And I guess St. Louis is doing a little better than expected early on in this season. That team's got a bright future ahead of them. Like some of the players that are standing out right now, like not exactly what Harper was talking about here, but little tangent, like Dylan Holloway, Broberg, those were great pickups. I like how Bolduc has played on this team. I like how the good players on this team, their star players are all kind of a good age. And then you looked at the World Juniors and they had the most players there. They had a lot of the best players there. So a lot in the cupboards for that team, and kind of, I don't know, it's looking good in St. Louis.
And Otto Stenberg just got recalled as well to join the team from Sweden.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if they're a playoff team right now, but you have to like what's going on there. But back to the teams that are playoff teams, it's kind of a, two separate tales here. Winnipeg and Colorado are being just carried by two guys. Hellebuck, Vezina type season right now, like running away with that voting for sure. And then McKinnon is just MVP and carrying that team. Like the top end talent in Colorado and the top end talent in Winnipeg are carrying their teams. And then Minnesota and Dallas are just depth, just full team effort there. So it's interesting that you can get it done both ways here in the Central, but I like the race that's going on here.
Yeah, I would say to kind of poke a bit of a hole in the theory, Kaprizov's pretty good. He carries quite a bit, I would say. And
yeah,
I mean, I know they've got depth too, but Kaprizov's pretty
just
good.
Comparing their depth to Winnipeg and Colorado's, it's more of a team effort there than the others.
Yeah, that's fair.
For sure. Kaprizov, he's probably going to be in the top 5 for the MVP. So
yeah, as he certainly should be. He's had a great year. For me, when I look at these top 4 teams, it is kind of the usual suspects. Winnipeg, I think, has been better than everyone thought. It took them like 14 games or something to lose at the start of this season. I forget exactly what it was, but they had a great record to to start off the rip, and that really has to do with Hellebuck. He's having another phenomenal year. Like
6 losses and 6 shutouts.
Craziness for
Regulation
him.
losses, I think.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
But I got to be honest, guys, and I'm curious if you feel the same way. Like Winnipeg and Minnesota right now are likely the 2 teams who are going to be competing for that number 1 spot in the Central. But would you take either of those teams in a playoff series against Dallas or Colorado, who are in the 3 and 4 spot? Because personally, I think I would pick Dallas or Colorado. I know they've had their issues this season for different reasons. Like Colorado, obviously it's been goaltending and depth as well, but I don't know. When I look at the playoff picture, I don't think it matters who finishes 1 and who finishes 4 or 5, no matter, how many teams from this division get in. But I'm taking Dallas or Colorado over Minnesota and Winnipeg. What about you guys?
I'd agree with that. And like Colorado fixing their goaltending is a huge thing. Mackenzie Blackwood has been fantastic for the Avalanche.
Odd contract though. Odd contract.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's like the Joey Daccord deal in Seattle. It's like that middle tier of goaltenders that you're making a long-term commitment to. It's a little bit risky, but Blackwood's a good goaltender, and they obviously wanted him. They got him, and he's played very well there. Dallas, they're interesting too, because we saw this last year in the postseason. By the time they got to that Western Conference final with Edmonton, what was the talk about Dallas? Oh, well, their depth is they're such a deep team. They're deeper than Edmonton. Their depth scoring kind of dried up by that point. And then, you're looking at a team like Minnesota. They've got to break through at some point, right? And win a playoff series. But yeah, I would have to agree, like, with the experience, and there's some recency bias involved, of course, but I would have to take Dallas and Colorado as well. But this race is really interesting. And yeah, like Case mentioned, you take Minnesota and Nashville and switch them. It's pretty much going as we expected.
I think there's a good thing going on in Dallas right now that's going to bode really well in the playoffs. And it's the fact that the young guys on this team will jump on a grenade for the old guys. Like, they actually adore their veterans on that team. Like, when you listen to interviews and you watch sort of that, like watching the they're doing a quarter century team for Dallas, and like I think it was Wyatt Johnson's like Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, like it immediately was like those two have to be on the team. Like they look up to those guys, and they're going to run through a brick wall for them when it comes time to playoffs. And then those veterans have a different gear for the playoffs. So I like what's going on in Dallas. I have for the last 3 or 4 years. So I'm going to stick with them when it comes to a playoff matchup. Winnipeg and Colorado, I feel like that's just a coin flip. It's really going to come down to the stars and who steps up. And when it comes to the playoffs, you got to give the nod to a McKinnon over a Hellebuck just from history.
Yeah, I was going to say you need to give the nod to Blackwood over Hellebuck in the playoffs, just because like Hellebuck turns into a pumpkin every year in the playoffs. I don't know why, but maybe this year will be different, and I hope for Jets fans it is, because you want to see Canadian teams do well. You don't want to see them win unless it's your team, but you want to see them do well. But
absolutely,
interesting race for sure. And just like going back to like that point I made about who I would take in a playoffs series. It's like you look at the goal differential of the teams, and Minnesota is a plus 13, right? Dallas right behind them, though, in the standings is a plus 32. And I know goal differential isn't everything, but it is pretty indicative of at least who is going to make the playoffs. And usually the better teams have a higher goal differential. But Winnipeg right now, plus 48. That's ridiculous. So I don't know. It's kind of a crazy season for a few reasons, but I would still take Colorado for sure in a playoff series over those teams.
We interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether a brand new one, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully because this ad is for you. Guys, Line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sportsbooks to maximize their winnings. Thankfully, there has never been a better time to get signed up, and we are here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all the top sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and their benefits. Most importantly, all of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through our link, again, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, once again, it's simple. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds out there, which is key to being successful and taking home those winnings, baby. So, if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand all at the same time, it's a win-win. Please consider signing up for your next sportsbook through our link in the description down below. signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. One more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. Hey guys, Harp here from the pod. We all want two things as sports fans when it comes to buying tickets: to not be ripped off by scalpers and to have an easy way to do it. That's where SeatGeek comes in. This pod is sponsored by the absolute best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. It does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know whether you're getting a good deal or not. If the tickets are green, you'd better act quick and secure those things, but if the tickets are red, maybe wait a little bit before pulling the trigger and monitor the price in the SeatGeek app. SeatGeek just makes it way too easy. Anyways, here's the best part. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOth in all caps. Click the link in the description to download the app today. And remember to get your discounted tickets to your favorite sporting events using the code BOYSINTHEBOOth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast. Yeah, that's totally a fair point for sure. All right, fellas, let's move over to the East and check in on the race that's going on in the Metro. So at the top, we've got the Washington Capitals. Certainly didn't expect them to be at number one, although, as we know, I was pretty high on them going into the season. And yeah,
even a broke clock is right twice a day, right?
Yeah, Hart probably said, "Oh, I think they'll squeak into a wild card spot at the number 2 and maybe be a couple points out or something." No, Harp, you didn't say they were going to be at the top of the league halfway through the year.
No.
What did you say though, Harp? Didn't you say second or third in the division?
Yeah, second or third in the division. Yeah.
I mean, listen, that's pretty good.
You guys didn't expect them to be spot.
No,
I still don't understand why they're there. Like, I don't understand. I don't. It's not the team from last year. The minus $1 million goal differential. They're 5th in goals against average. They're 2nd in goals per game. They're a plus 43 differential. They have goaltending from Thompson and like real good goaltending from Thompson.
Yeah, surely that guy would be on Team Canada going forward, right?
They're getting league average from Lindgren. They have depth scoring. They have vintage OV. Like, we were talking about it earlier. It's a Jack Adams waiting for Spencer Carberry because
and
no
you
one expected this.
Exactly, and you would think that surely there would be even one Washington Capitals player in the entire Four Nations tournament. Guess what? There isn't, which is pretty crazy. Not a single Capitals player is on any of the rosters.
Well,
but anyway,
they're looking Russia notoriously. So
yeah, but John Carlson, that is a bit of an odd one. Like, you'd think he would get the nod. Chikrin might have had an outside chance, but I think Carlson is like the biggest snub from that team.
Yeah.
It's like otherwise, like Strome, McMichael. I don't think so.
Tom
Obviously,
Wilson.
Ovi would play for Team Russia, but
yeah, exactly. But anyway, like we were talking about off air, the top three in the Metro is pretty much set. It's Washington, it's the Devils, and it's the Hurricanes. I think we could certainly see either the Devils or the Canes move up into number one at some point. They're not too far out from that spot behind Washington. And then it's everybody else that is still in the race. Columbus, Pittsburgh, the Rangers, the Islanders, and even the Flyers, who are in last in this division at 41 points. They're kind of hanging around still. Big win over Anaheim, and that was obviously big for them with who returning to Philadelphia and getting quite the reaction from the Flyers fans. Jamie Drysdale scoring in that game as well.
Man, I saw that they had to confiscate signs from dirtbag Philly fans at the game.
Are you really surprised?
No, not at all, man. They had to confiscate signs because they were filled with profanity about Cutter Gauthier. Like they are just, if that team's good, if the Flyers are good, like that's an all-time fan base. Like the Leafs played them like a week ago now, and like it made me think like that is a rivalry that has been totally lost over the last like 10 years because the Flyers really haven't been good while the Leafs have been good in this stint. So like if they get good, like that's a rivalry I would like to see again because those fans are nuts and I love it.
They are. They're crazy. What a sports town that is. But
guys,
let's get into the Metro.
Nothing that can happen at a hockey game that justifies assault.
That clip.
Point that out.
Yeah.
Philly dirtbag fans, like it's novel. It's
novel
when
this,
it's things
I
like chanting.
I didn't see this. What are you guys talking about?
It's novel when it's like chanting F you Cutter, and like that's funny, and it's all like fine and dandy when it happens like that.
Okay, explain the clip to Harper.
There's just a clip of two like Leafs fans that kind of seem a bit lost in Philly, and the story is that they're waving to some guys a few sections above them. And then this Philly dirtbag just goes down and sucker punches both of them with 5 pillow punches and then walks away. It's like, man, there's nothing that justifies a grown man to cause a felony at a sporting event. It's so stupid.
I did see that, and yes, that is terrible. And those two Leaf fans look like the most innocent guys ever. And then you get this drunk dirtbag Flyers fan who just suckers them. I did see that video.
Just all the comments on the video that are like, well, you can't go into another team's barn and do that. It's like, no, you can't assault a human. Like, fuck.
Yeah, it's like what kind of logic is that? Like, you can't be safe going to a game, like crazy. But though, you know what?
To Ottawa, decked out in Buffalo gear, nothing happens to me. Like,
well, Harp, when we went to Buffalo and I wore my Maple Leafs jacket and it was Devils and Sabres, like you guys saw, I was getting comments that night, like, nice jacket, buddy. But it was never like I didn't feel like I was going to get suckered because I wasn't in Philly. Like, what a crazy...
They're looking at you like you're an idiot because that team's not even playing.
You deserve to get chirped for something like that, but under no circumstances does anyone deserve to get sucker punched or whatever.
They took it well though. They really they soaked those punches and they were like, "What are you doing?"
Definitely. And just a side note, sorry to interrupt. Like, remember when we were coming back and we're crossing over the border, and like the guy there, like the
border officer,
border officer or whatever. He was like, what is going on in this car? We got a Sabres fan, a Devils fan, and a Leafs fan. Like,
and the three of them started a podcast.
We were wearing our jerseys, and Chad is wearing a Leafs coat. He looks down and goes, what is going on in here? Get out of my sight.
Yeah. But anyway, so the Metro, there's quite a race going on in this division, and the race in the East overall is fantastic. I wish there was one team in particular who wasn't so far out of it. I mean, maybe a little early to completely write them off. But
I
don't
wish the
know.
Flyers were better too, man. I wish they were.
But yeah, just thoughts on this division and how things are shaken out right now.
Yeah, I mean, the top three teams are the top three teams. We expected the Rangers to be up there, but we've touched on them already. So you got to talk about Columbus. They've been very good lately. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. Zach Werenski is my vote for the Norris Trophy winner at the moment. Like
He might win the Hart.
he could.
Like if they...
He could win the Hart. The way
Unreal.
he's playing, it's really good. I like what I'm seeing in Columbus, and that's a team that I would really like to see make the playoffs or just be competitive. It's been a long time coming, and I look back on teams of past years in Columbus, and I get nostalgia. So I don't know. I would love to see them be good.
Yeah, and we said at the start of the year, Case, this was the point I think you made on one of our preview shows. Like, you know, obviously talking about the tragedy that happened with Johnny and his brother, the Gaudreau brothers.
Yeah,
this could be an event that goes one of two ways. It could motivate this team. They play for them. They play above. They kind of punch above their weight class here, and they can squeak into a playoff spot. Or it could do the opposite, and it just makes guys, you know, kind of hate hockey and not want to be in that situation. Well, it's been the former. They've been playing really good hockey all year long, and, you know, kind of, I don't want to say uncharacteristically, because they've got good players there, you know, like, but it's just no one expected them to be playing in super important games here midway through the season. I think we kind of picture them as being, you know, where Philly is right now, who's at the bottom of the division, and, you know, kind of looking forward to next year or the year after. And even after, you know, the drama with Juracek and everything, like they've still found a way to win games here. And, you know, it's really encouraging. So yeah, I'm glad you brought up Columbus. Great team to talk about there. The team that surprised me, though, as I'm looking at the standings, and this again goes back to our preseason predictions, is the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, we all mentioned reasons why they could fall off, right? Like losing some key players, Teravainen, Brady Shea, like guys like that who are super important, not really doing anything between the pipes, even though a guy like Freddie Anderson is seemingly always injured in and out of the crease, and Kochetkov is yet to be proven as a true like number one or tandem guy. But you know what? Like, they've done a really good job this season. They're extremely well coached, and they could potentially still win this division. Like, Harp, you said it, it wouldn't be crazy to see either Carolina or New Jersey bump up to that number one spot and dethrone the Washington Capitals. So they're having a great year. Had to point that out.
Yeah. And they needed a horse to step forward, and they got that in Nate Cash, especially early in the season, and in November, I think it was, is his unbelievable, or December. He had a crazy month, and they really needed that. But also, like, when you talk about goaltending, the way they play the game, you know, Dustin Tokarski can get a shutout playing goalie. Like, they play defensively, and they play smart.
Yeah.
So it's maybe against what we were saying early on, but like in hindsight, it's totally expected.
Yeah. And
sorry, go ahead, Chad.
Well, I was just going to say, like, we were talking about Dallas earlier, and like that is the one knock for me against Carolina and Dallas going forward, is like every year they're right in it, and you can pretty well pick them to win a playoff series or two, like every year. But when are one of these teams like finally going to break through and get it done, right? I compare the two because they're in the same sort of window. They have the same kind of experienced players, but they've got a lot of guys who contribute up and down the lineup. They've been to the dance a bunch of times. They've got to those conference finals. You know, Dallas got to a final a few years ago, and it's like, when are they going to get over the hump? And, you know, the Hurricanes are a team that just, they come up, and to me, they're really close with Dallas in terms of teams who have been there but haven't exactly got the job done.
Well, talking about Carolina, I mean, for years now, the Eastern Conference Final has been their kryptonite. Like, they just can't seem to get past that point. And so I think if they can, you know, as soon as this season, then it might be a year for the Hurricanes in a year when we didn't expect them to be this good. And I mean, we were all going on Daily Face Off and looking at their lineup after losing the players that they did in the offseason, and we're like, oh, this is a thin looking lineup. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. Under Eric Tulsky, I think this is an organization who just makes really smart decisions, and they are able to find players and get them at a really good value. Jack Roslovic, Eric Robinson, who's had a great year. Jackson Blake has stepped in and has been a pretty good rookie for them. You look at Jack Drury. I mean, the list goes on. So I think Carolina is a deep team, and as you mentioned, Case, they needed a horse to step up and really drive the bus for them. And Marty Necas has been that guy, and also I'm really developing an appreciation for Seth Jarvis. Was certainly surprised that he made Team Canada and that some guys were left off the team. But I mean, he's a hell of a player and a big part of the core of their team. So yeah, Carolina, really solid team. But again, we have to see what's going to come in the playoffs for them.
Before we move on to Atlanta here, or the Atlantic here, I got to talk about the Devils quickly. Like, the Devils, I kind of hoped that they'd be maybe a little bit further ahead in this race right now, but there's so many games that happened so far this season where they'll lose, and then like the deserved to win-o-meter on Money Puck is like 87% of the time New Jersey wins. It's just like they've lost probably 5 of those games. And those hurt so much. But
you know what that's called, Case? I got something for you. The Sheldon Keefe effect.
Okay. Sheldon Keefe is in third in the Jack Adams voting. So we'll move on from that stupid comment that I've been told several times by Leafs fans only. And I'm going to point out that I'm still comfortable, though. Like, when it comes to, maybe Jack Hughes could be scoring more. But it doesn't matter because Jesper Bratt is, and Nico Hischier is putting the puck in the net. And then you have guys like, Cotter gets hot at times. Nason has been a absolute godsend in terms of scoring goals. That's for sure. Power play has changed with him. And, you're getting scoring from the back end. You're getting scoring from everywhere. And then the team is defensive minded, plays such a great structure defensively. They're 4th in goals against average. They are top 5 in stats like hits, in block shots, and in fights. Like, this team has become this gritty beast that when you add the skill of the top end guys and that grit and determination, and they're looking to add a guy like Jake Evans, and they want to add another middle 6 forward on top of that. That's their target, is a 4th line center and a middle 6 forward. It just gives me a lot of confidence going into the playoffs, especially when Markstrom is in the Vezina race.
Yeah, he's having a great season. I'm glad you mentioned his name because I was going to bring him up. 12.5 goals saved above expected right now through 32 games. That's pretty damn good. Who would have thought putting him in a good situation where a team plays good defense in front of him would change his game entirely? Similar to what the Flames were a few seasons ago when they had all their big guys who actually played defensively. But yeah, what a season they've had so far. They are sitting points percentage 3rd in that division, but you know what? Like, it doesn't matter. They're at the point where you're confident if they get in, they can beat any team, and they're going to be a real tough out. And if that division shapes up how it currently is by the time playoffs roll around, that first round series between them and Carolina is going to be ridiculous because both of those teams play fast, hard. They play strong defensively. They do it up and down the lineup. They have good goaltending for the most part. So yeah, that'll be a scary one because one of the best teams in the division, if they do play in the first round, will have to go out in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, like Markstrom being in the Vezina conversation very quietly, right? Is that fair to say? Like, all the talk has been around Hellebuck and rightfully so. But yeah, Markstrom has been terrific as expected. Also, how many goals does Stefan Nason have? 17 already
he's
on the season?
crushed his career high already.
17, yeah. That's wild.
That's awesome. No, so the Devils, we knew they were going to be better. Again, health is a big thing for them, especially their top guys. They're getting the depth, and if they can add a Jake Evans or whoever, that would be really, really nice for this team. So good stuff.
Atlantic now to close it out here, the wild card race.
Yeah, we'll move on to the Atlantic, and so again, like you're looking at the top two is pretty well set with the Maple Leafs and the Panthers. Then you've got Tampa, Boston, who has had a real up and down season. They only have a .500 record against opponents in their conference, which is pretty alarming when you're, considering that it's the Boston Bruins. So, they're in third and fourth, respectively, in terms of points, and everyone else below them or around them, Ottawa, Detroit, Montreal, they're all in it, and then there's that team at the bottom that will remain nameless.
That shall not be named.
Yes.
Oh, they're going to be named.
But anyway, we're obviously going to have a few things to say about the Atlantic here, so let's get into it.
Yeah, I want to start off here because we've talked about in the past how good teams, the top teams, the teams at the top three in these divisions, they are the top teams because they do not lose more than 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
They snap those streaks and they win hockey games. The wild card spots are taken by streaks, by heroic streaks, by miraculous streaks throughout the season. Every year.
Lost the same way as well.
And they're lost the same way. The Ottawa Senators went 8-1 between December 5th and December 21st. Ullmark was a huge part of that. Also, it seemed like they finally realized, if we play defense, we have a better chance at winning hockey games. We're not just going to outscore our troubles.
Even
so
without
they started
Ullmark.
Yeah, they started playing defense and they started winning hockey games. Now they've started struggling once again, but I mean, it's up and down. So an 8-1 streak is going a long way for them. And if they can have another one, they're right there. Montreal is currently 9-2-1 since December 17th. Laine has done something to that locker room. I don't know what it is. They have some real scoring in Montreal now. They have Suzuki is showing he can be clutch. 5 overtime wins. 6 is the NHL record in a season. So that's huge. Dobes starts starts 3 wins in his first 3 games. Is this another flash in the pan? I don't know. This feels like the classic story in Montreal. Some guy comes in the net, lights it up for a few games, and then he's in the ECHL in 4 years. So I hope that's not the case for him, but that's Montreal. Detroit had a stretch of 3-8-2 between November 29th and December 27th. Now they have the coach's bump, like we mentioned, 7-1, 7-game cooking. Buffalo. Chad.
Yes.
What is the date of American Thanksgiving? It was November 27th, Chad.
That's a good question.
And what happened on that date?
On that day, I made a prediction that was half correct. I said that the Boston Bruins would fall out of a playoff spot, and that spot would be taken by the Buffalo Sabres.
And the curse kicked in, and 13 games in a row were lost by Buffalo, starting on American Thanksgiving. Yeah. So
that is so good. And if we listen back, I surely said something to that effect of
you did.
Yeah, good luck, Harp. Now they're cooked.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, the first 3 teams I mentioned there, they're all going on these heroic runs and really making a push and kind of staking their claim for a wild card spot. They can all catch Boston, who are 3-6-1 in their last 10 games, sporting a minus 26 goal differential. Like, that's a catchable team.
They've already caught them in points percentage. Yeah. All 3 of those teams have. are all sitting
Exactly.
above Boston.
Exactly. And so the streaks, man, that's how wild cards are won.
Yep.
And all of them have got the taste of it.
And Boston was a team who a few years ago, even last year, would not lose that third or fourth game in a row. They would straighten it out. They would win it in overtime. They would find something heroic within their locker room to get it done. But this year, they just don't have it. It's just not working out, and they're going on bad streaks. You know, you mentioned 3-6-1 in their last 10. It's slipping away. It's not the same team.
No.
At all.
And in
No.
the second half of this season, the wild card is going to come down to the team that can stop those losing streaks, that can kill them before they happen.
Totally.
No, exactly. And, you know, like just I have to talk about Buffalo for a second. Like 6-2 loss to the Kraken on the weekend, and they have leads in games, they blow leads, trouble defending. I mean, it's just been horrific. And I think that the worst part about it is that we mentioned Ottawa, Detroit, and Montreal are all ahead of Buffalo at this point and are all playing with more consistency and going on these runs. I'm going to say it right now, from what we've seen from this team this season in particular over the last couple of years, Buffalo is just incapable of going on an 8-1-1 rip at an during the season. Now, they have done it. They've surprised us. Like again, going into American Thanksgiving, they were 7-2-0 and you know, looking good and in a spot. You know, I think they were 3 points out of first in the Atlantic at that point, and then they just took it right off the tracks. So, you know, again, it's like when you have a team that is incapable at this point of winning more than 2 games in a row, that's really not going to get you anywhere. So, and it's even more painful, the fact that Ottawa, Detroit, and Montreal are all ahead of them, especially the Montreal Canadiens, because we looked at this team and we were saying that, you know, especially with the start that they got off to, oh, okay, they're still young, they're still building, they're not ready yet. Well, this has been quite a run that they've been on. And going back to Boston, this will be my last point for this division. Then you guys can take it from there. You know, I think Elliot Friedman made a really good point not that long ago talking about the Bruins, and it really comes down to the culture. There's no Chara, there's no Bergeron, there's no Krejci, there's no Rask anymore, and I think eventually that catches up to you. And I think the Bruins, you know, rebuilding and all of that is not in their DNA. And so that's where you can really get yourself in trouble with the contracts that they handed out to the likes of Lindholm and Zadorov. And those additions just have not worked out so far. The new coach bump with Joe Sacco has worn off, and it's one up, one down with this team. And they were damn lucky to win that game against Florida over the weekend. They give up the tying goal with 1.8 seconds left in the third, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. But again, like it was Jordan Osterley on the ice at that point in the game. Like there's not enough depth. Zero prospects in the World Juniors. I mean, this is part of a larger discussion when it comes to the Boston Bruins. But yes, like they are the one team that could certainly fall out of this. It's certainly looking like that is a very big possibility, because those 3 teams that we mentioned, Ottawa, Montreal, and Detroit, are all playing better hockey, and they've all caught up.
Yeah, a couple things on the Bruins. You mentioned not having all of those leadership guys for the dressing room, the culture, everything. Guys like Bergeron, Chara, Krejci, Rask, whatever, the list goes on. But not only do they not have them for the culture, they don't have them on the ice anymore, which is the bigger issue, because
That's
now when
right.
you look at the lineup, it's like, you know, and I don't even hate these guys, but it's like you've got Charlie Coyle playing like in your top 6 and he's like a go-to guy, he's fine. But it's like, he's really leaned on this team to provide offense. And it's
Yeah.
like, he was just never that player
Too
before.
many guys, sorry to cut you off, too many guys playing one spot above where they should be.
Or 2 or 3 spots above where
Exactly.
like Mark McLaughlin, Justin Brazeau, like
Yeah.
Trent Frederick, they're all fine players, right?
They
But
are.
it's just they're playing above where they should be. So that's a big thing
Mhm.
for Boston. They've already fallen out in terms of points percentage on this
Yes.
day. When they got the new coach bump, I thought that my prediction was cooked. I thought they were going to win the division and like, I would just look like the biggest dum-dum because I've been saying since the start of the year, like this Bruins team is not the same.
No.
And for that reason, that's why I picked them to win the stupid division because I just thought, that would be so Boston Bruins of them, like the year that they lost Bergeron and Krejci and everyone, and they still go out and have the best season ever. But it's just odd. Like they're not, like you can argue on paper that they got better this year compared to last year because they added Lindholm, they added Zadorov, but it hasn't worked. And I think this core is kind of past its peak and it's not going well. But that's what I wanted to. Oh, and then of course Jeremy Swayman has not been good in that whole contract debacle. We don't need to get into, but that's the Bruins. I wanted to go back to your point on the Sabres as well. Talk about them blowing leads. Second in the NHL right now in terms of blowing leads when leading after the first period. They've done that 5 times, and that's second in the league. And then blowing leads when they're leading after 2 periods, they're also second in the NHL. They've only done it twice, but still, teams just generally don't do that. San Jose, by the way, leads in both of those categories, which is not shocking at all. But it's not good.
No, it's not good at all. And thank God this team doesn't have to play Colorado anymore this season. Am I right? Like when it comes to to getting leads, big leads, like 3
was
or
that
4
5-0?
goals. Yeah, 4 or 5-0, and find a way to lose it. So it's it's tough. I mean, could they go on a little rip? Maybe, but everything that I've seen from this group this season, it's not happening, and it's going to be a 14th consecutive year of no playoffs. It's just it's heartbreaking.
Bad. And you mentioned like the wild card race too, and talking about Montreal, and that was a team that we didn't think would be anywhere near the playoff race this deep into the season. Well, now I look at that team, I might have more confidence in them than a Boston, Detroit, or Ottawa because they're showing something out there. Like they're leaving it out on the ice when they play. Like they're playing with heart. They've got some young, fun, talented players like that. Lane Hudson, even though he turns it over 18 or 19 times a game, is like incredible offensively, and he's going to figure it out.
Good too.
Yeah, his brother does. There you go, Caps fans. There's another one coming for you.
Yeah,
but
no, absolutely.
He looks great, man.
Oh, for sure. And another thing with Montreal, I wanted to add, great trade for Alexander Carrier. He is fit like a glove with that team, and that was the kind of move that they needed to make because they had way too many young defensemen who are all kind of the same. And so Barron was the one who got shipped out. But yeah, that was a really nice ad. And, I mean, we mentioned Jake Evans, like a player that the Devils are interested in. I mean, if Montreal can stay alive here and stay in it, they might want to think about keeping a guy like Jake Evans because he has been unbelievable for them over the last 20 games or so.
Case, we talked about this.
Yeah, no, yes. He plays a lot for that team. He scores, he plays with a purpose. He's like prototypical perfect trade deadline pickup for any playoff team. So as a for the Devils, I hope they move him, but Montreal should be holding on to him.
They should keep him.
He goes way back on this podcast because Harper and I went to the rookie showcase in Belleville and watched Montreal play way back when, and he was the guy I mentioned on the podcast after. I said he was my standout player from that tournament. I was like, I didn't even know him going in. I was like, who's Evans? This guy is tearing this tournament up.
Totally
he was
forgot
great.
about that. But yeah, we had eyes on him early for sure, and he looked real good. Chad, like before we wrap up here, did you want to talk about Toronto a little bit?
I'll say one thing about the Leafs, because they've lost 2 straight now. They're a good team. It's a must win on Tuesday against Dallas, I think, is their next game. And if they don't do it, then that'll be a real turning point for the season. But I have all the confidence that they'll break this little mini streak that they're on right now. Not only are they not winning, they're not playing well either. So something's got to give. But at just past the midway point of the season, I'm pretty happy with where the Maple Leafs are. I think they're playing a pretty good brand of hockey. The injuries have been a big issue this year, missing guys like Jake McCabe, who has become really important to the lineup. Austin Matthews, of course, is the guy who stands out. Anthony Stolars is still out. He had, I think, a 4 to 6 week timeline with a pebble in his knee, as it was described by the general manager, who is very much not a doctor, but that's the information that we got. He had a pebble removed from his knee. But yeah, so honestly, like I'm not going to go full complainer mode here on the Maple Leafs because they've lost 2 straight and have looked rough in doing so. But pretty content where they are. We've said this year over year, like they have to put themselves in a position to succeed when they get to the playoffs. And the only way to do that is to either get home ice or win the division so that you're getting home ice no matter who you play. And they're setting themselves up nicely if they can continue this decent stretch of hockey. I think they're on pace for about 108, 109 points, something like that last time I checked. And that would be a slight improvement from last year, despite the fact that they're scoring a little bit less. Their defense has just been really good. So if they're able to get home ice by winning the division, maybe you get a bit of an easier matchup. Maybe you play one of the wild card teams, whether that's, Columbus or Detroit or Ottawa. Hopefully it's not Boston, but one of those teams, right? And hopefully you set yourself up for a bit of an easier matchup in the first round rather than having to go through a gauntlet of Tampa Bay, then Florida, then Carolina, then, Edmonton, Colorado, whoever it is on the other side. Like if you can set yourself up nicely, you should. And that has been the one knock against the Leafs every year. They have a good regular season, but it's never quite good enough. So it's encouraging this year, and I hope they continue it.
Yeah, well said. Case, anything to add before we wrap up?
I hate that they are on a tough streak right now for the Leafs because they play the Devils Thursday, and I will be in attendance. So it's classic Leafs form to destroy the Devils at home, and in particular when you're on a shit streak. I've seen 2 games in Toronto, and they lost both. The Devils lost both of those, so hoping to break that streak here.
Yeah, at least if the Leafs do lose at home on Thursday against the Devils, our fans won't be throwing stuff on the ice. Case, do you remember that in New Jersey?
Do remember that?
Oh, geez.
That was a tough game to watch. That was one of those deserve to win meters above 80%.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like popcorn on the ice, and
they're passionate. They expect to win.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What are you gonna do?
All right, there we go. That wraps it up for episode 226, little mid-season check-in on both the Eastern and Western conferences and the playoff races going on in said conferences. So thanks so much for listening. Happy New Year. Hope your 2025 is off to a great start. Thanks so much for listening as always, and we'll chat with you again next week.